I'm Nichola Fletcher and I'm going to be cooking a little venison recipe for you. It's one of the recipes out of my new book, The Venison Bible, and it's a recipe I've chosen because I can explain a few things that people get worried about with venison. There's so much to talk about and I can't talk about everything, but I'll cram as much as I possibly can in. So what we're going to do is we've essentially got the ingredients here, which is our lovely little piece of venison. Now this could be a venison steak if you wanted just a normal steak. In this case I'm using a little single muscle from the haunch, the back leg, so it's a little bit plumper, it's like a tiny little sort of fillet. And as a garnish we're going to use a bit of streaky bacon because I want to get the flavour of the bacon fat out of that. And with that we're going to do what I'm calling vegetable ribbons. Now this is a lovely, fresh, healthy recipe. So that goes along with the fresh, healthy image of venison, which of course is more than an image because it's just a lovely, lovely lean meat. Doesn't have marbling, which is why we need to pay attention when we're cooking it. So the vegetable ribbons are made from carrots and leeks and courgettes. So 3 nice vegetables. Just slice them in quarter like that and then put that into some water so they end up as little pieces and any remaining grit will come out in the water. So we'll do that first and let them swish around a wee bit like that. Just flake it. This is actually quite nice and clean, which is fairly amazing because it's come out of my garden, which is very muddy at the moment. So this is what you do. You just take your carrot, or just take the top off that, and just with your potato peeler just get slices off it, quite thin, don't want them too thick, like that, all the way down, and then you turn on the other side, like that. So don't press down too hard or the slices come out really rather thick, and a little bit too thick for this recipe. So we're getting these nice little ribbons, and you just carry on doing that until you've used them all up. Okay, so that's that stage, and we'll cook those in a moment, and I'll just explain what else we've got here. We've got the zest of a lime, or you could use a lemon, it doesn't really matter, they're both lovely, just slightly different, and we'll be using a little bit of the juice as well. And we've got a little bit of ginger here, chopped up, fresh ginger, and we'll use some parsley at the end, or even nicer actually is coriander, but I had a disaster in the garden with my coriander, so we're having parsley today. So just put a tiny wee bit of oil in the pan here and chopped up the bacon, and I'm cooking it not too fiercely because I want all that nice bacon fat to come out of the bacon, and I want it to go nice and brown and crispy, so I'll just let it sit there for a wee bit. Good, so that's it, all nice and frizzled and crisp, so we'll just keep that warm, but we'll just keep that little bit of nicely flavoured oily fat in the pan there. I'll put that in a bowl. And we're just going to use some oil for this. I use grapeseed oil because it doesn't burn. You have to be very careful with oils that you don't let them smoke too much, or anything let it smoke too much, because that's not very good for you. But grapeseed oil is a good one for that. Also, I like the idea of grapes and wine residues. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with the leeks, and then we'll put the carrots in, and then last of all we put the courgettes in, because they just take slightly different lengths of time to cook. You don't want them to actually fall to pieces. So with these ones, we don't really want them to actually brown, we just want them to soften in the oil. So you just keep them moving around. And obviously you need a fairly big pan for this, because to start off with, these vegetables take up quite a lot of room, and a little tiny pan will make life more difficult for you. Or if you haven't got a really big pan, maybe use 2 smaller ones and do them in batches, because it will keep a little bit in the oven. So now some of these little pieces are just beginning to go a little bit transparent, which shows that they're just beginning to cook, which is great. And once a few more of them started doing that, we'll put the carrot in, because that also takes a bit longer. It's going a bit floppy now, so that's fine. I'll put the carrots in. Beautiful colours, this. Goes the carrot. And again, for this operation, a pair of tongs is really good, because you can just hold them quite gently and turn them over, so you're not going to break anything up, and you can keep them moving. So this is, obviously if you have a wok, that's ideal. You can do it in a wok, because we're potentially just stir frying, but we're not using the fiercest heat possible. We're just using quite a hot heat, but not top heat. Now the carrots are just starting to go a little bit softer now, so that's great. So that means it's time to put the courgette in, because the courgette cooks quite quickly. As I said, we want them to be soft, but not actually falling to pieces. So in goes our courgette ribbons. And again, just softly fold them over. Pick them up, turn them over, stir them around. The courgette is likely to be the most fragile of all. See the attractive colour of the courgette skin. So we're nearly there now. Courgette's going a bit translucent as well, so that means it's just about done. We'll put in our zest, so that was lemon or lime either. There's a lovely fresh smell. We're going to put a little bit of the ginger in too. Ginger and venison is a very good combination. And I think ginger and carrots is a very good combination as well. There we are, just keep turning those round, and now we're getting, lovely smells coming off this. That's just about done. Here we are. I've just put a tiny little bit of butter in the pan. Mainly because I'm a sucker for butter, I'm afraid. I really like the taste of it. So you don't, if you've got an aversion to butter, don't worry, just use what was in the pan already. And we're waiting till all the froth has gone down from that. And we're going to put our lovely piece of venison in. Just wait till it's starting to, just beginning to go golden there. You don't want to burn this, you just want to make it sure that it's really nicely browned on the outside, because it's the browning on the outside that gives that lovely flavour. So you want to get the right balance between browning the outside but not overcooking the inside. So the thinner your steak is, if you're just doing a tiny little thin steak, you want a very hot pan indeed. Slap it in, brown it, turn it over, brown it, and out the pan, and that is all it would need. But this piece obviously is a lot thicker, so we're going to cook it slightly slower so it doesn't burn on the outside, but just does brown. And when you put it in the pan, resist the temptation to start sugaring it about immediately, because when you put a piece of meat in the pan, especially if it's straight out of the fridge, it will cool down the pan a fraction, and it also will stick a little bit to the bottom. So just let it sit there until it forms a little crust, and then after a little while you can start moving it about. And you can see the meat slightly contracts, shrinks a little bit as it goes into the pan, and also it starts to get a little bit thicker as it goes into the pan. So when you're cooking venison, the whole secret when you're roasting it or when you're frying it like this or grilling it is to make sure that the outside is nicely cooked but the inside is still nice and juicy. And if you're using wild venison, which generally speaking is older than from a farm or park, what I've tended to find is that the difference between pink venison and overcooked venison is a very small window. It seems to just switch from being almost raw to overcooked. It's quite tricky, so you really want to keep an eye on it. And I find the easiest way to do this is to actually undercook the meat and then just rest it until it's cooked. Don't cook it in a pan or in the oven till it's cooked. Rest it till it's cooked. So we're just going to make sure this is nicely browned all over. That's not quite brown enough yet. So just be patient and give it time to actually brown. And if you were making a sauce in this pan, then all these little bits of brown that are stuck onto the bottom of the pan, that is your flavour. So you could just add a drop of wine or even just a drop of water or a drop of orange juice and you've got an instant sauce there. But don't let it actually blacken or it will be a little bit thicker. But it can be quite a dark brown and do the job. Now at this stage, if that was an ordinary steak, that would probably be enough. That would be just 5 minutes or something of cooking it. Then it would not be ready to eat by then. You would then put it into your plate warming oven or keep it warm above the stove, anywhere where it keeps the heat and doesn't lose heat. This one, because it's a little bit thicker, we're going to put in the oven and we're going to put it in quite a hot oven, about 220, 200, something like that. And before I do that, I'm going to put a meat thermometer in it. This is a bit of an old-fashioned type, but works extremely well. And you just jam it into the meat. And you take it out of the oven when it's a good 2 sections below where you want it to end up being. So if you want to end it up as medium, which is about 65 degrees, 150, you would take it out before it had even reached rare, okay? I usually take it out sort of about 7 o'clock, something like that. And you want to jam it right into the centre of the meat, like that. Okay, so we'll put that on a dish, and we'll stick it in the oven. Like that. I'll pop it up like that so that I can see the meat through the oven. And in that goes. Okay, that's just before very, very rare. So I'm going to take it out of the really hot oven and just leave it to rest in the plate warming drawer. So that's the meat thermometer. You can see that blue bit is very rare. So it's not even got to rare yet, so that's perfect. So now we take it out of this fierce heat and we put it in a really gentle heat. And what happens there, so here's our lovely vegetables as well. What happens during this process is quite important, because if I slice that open at the moment, what you'd have is a ring round the edge which is cooked and a lovely brown exterior, but in the middle it would be far too pink and it would be uneven. So what happens when you're resting it is that all that far too pink juice in the middle gets drawn back to the outside, and the heat from the outside gets transferred into the middle, so you end up with a nice evenly pink, very juicy piece of meat. And I think that's something that a lot of people, especially restaurants, I think, don't necessarily get, or maybe they don't have time to rest meat, because to me that makes the meat much more supple and much more juicy, and much more delicious. I think it actually tastes better when you do it that way. And certainly with something like venison, which is so lean that if you cook it past that pink stage, it goes very, very dry. And any lean meat, I mean, pork does the same, doesn't it? It goes really dry if you cook it too much. So with venison, you really want to have a roast or a steak, just that pink stage. Now it can be very, very pink if you like it rare, or it can just have a hint of pink, but as long as it's just a little bit of pink, it's impossible for it to be dry. And that's my message. Pink meat can't be dry. Okay, that's rather what I was describing, a ring of cooked around the edge. And now some people might find that's just perfect, in which case go for it. Other people might say that centre bit's just really a bit too red, so that's an indication it just needs a wee bit more time to rest, and that red will transfer to that overcooked bit around the edge. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you can just slice it up, and just as you're ready to serve, heat up your frying pan again and just warm it through very, very, very quickly, and that'll just take the pinkness off it, and then serve it immediately. So you've got two options there. It goes into the oven just to warm up. Right, we'll take the thermometer out and we'll just carve this up. You can use these type of probe thermometers as well if you don't have one, but these sort of thermometers are incredibly cheap. They're less than £10 to buy, and I think every kitchen should have a meat thermometer. If you're at all worried about cooking meat, just use a meat thermometer. It makes life so easy. I think that's probably the best tip I'm giving you today. Buy a meat thermometer. So I'm just going to cut it into chunks. Now you can see how the pink has now gone right out to the edge there. It's much more evenly pink and very soft and flexible, and nobody could say that was tough and dry. Very, very juicy. And because it's nice and tender and juicy like this, you can cut it, in reasonable chunks. If by some terrible mischance your venison was old and rather tough, then cut it very, very thin. Because if you're cutting it across the grain, you cut it thin, you're cutting the little fibres, and it makes it feel more tender than perhaps it really is. So here we have some nice pink venison. Now, if that's too pink for you, because I know everybody has their own preferences, and you've chopped it all up and you think, oh my lord, it's too pink. Two things to consider. One is that it does tend to go on cooking a little bit, so the chances are by the time it's on the plate, it might not be too pink. But if it really seriously is, you can just throw some bits back in the pan, and we're going to put a little bit of our lemon juice, our lime juice, which we never put on before, so you could just moisten the pan a little bit with that. And you don't want to actually cook it or start frying it, you just want to warm it through. A little bit of some sort of moisture. And see, already it's less pink, and that's fine. So you can serve that up. So I'll just put our venison over the top. I'm going to put the pink stuff shown because I like the pinker stuff better. But even this bit that in the middle, you can see the two colours. Even those bits that are less pink to look at, they're still lovely and juicy. Really moist. Another tip is, I quite often get asked by families and say, oh well, one of us likes it pink, the other one doesn't like it pink, what do we do? and so I advise them to have a sauce that has got a good lot of colour in it and cover the pink meat in the sauce, and so the person that doesn't like pink meat can't see it, and they think it's absolutely delicious as long as they can't see it. There we are, there's our lovely pink venison, all juicy and lovely. And we'll just scatter our little bits of bacon over the top. And then some colour, a little bit of parsley or coriander. There we are, yummy.